Hello everyone, Generation 112 welcomes you in this new broadcast of EUBC recorded in the European Parliament in Brussels with the support of ARC2020. Today we'll focus on the Common Agricultural Policy and more specifically on its impact outside the EU. The Common Agricultural Policy, the oldest European policy, is currently undergoing an important reform which will shape the future of European agriculture. The challenges ahead are huge, not only for Europe, but also for the rest of the world. Meeting the needs of a growing world population while the cost of input for production are rising, reaching a balance between the preservation of the environment and competitive farming, and building a fairer agricultural policy towards the rest of the world. Here are a couple of questions which the current reform aims to answer. For the first time, the European Parliament is a co-legislator in this field and is therefore playing a key role in the reform process of the CAP. This week, the Agricultural Committee in the Parliament is holding key meetings on that topic. The rapporteurs are presenting their different reports, paving the way for further discussion. It is because it's a crucial week that our guests are in the Parliament today. Indeed, we have the pleasure to receive three farmers coming from several continents around the world, America, Europe, and Africa, in order to exchange with the rapporteurs in the European Parliament, ARC2020, a multi-stakeholder platform of civil society networks and organizations, which has been set up thanks to the initiative of different organizations, like the think tank Groupe de Bruges, has invited those three farmers to get a public discussion on the international impact of the CAP and get different perspectives of the challenges ahead. So I have the pleasure to introduce you to Helen Yego, who is a farmer from Rift Valley in Kenya. Hi.
Hi, thank you very much.
Then we have Seita van Kampen from the European Milk Board, coming from the Netherlands.
Yes, thank you.
And then we have Joe Borging, farmer from the US. Hi.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
And so maybe we can start with our first question to get to know you a bit better and get an insight of your personal experiences. So can you present each of us maybe your activity and what you do, and then tell us what the CAP represents for each of you? Is it like a threat, an opportunity, or a barrier? Maybe we can start with you, Seita.
Thank you. In the European Milk Board, we have a lot of farmers' organizations, milk producers' organizations, and our concern is our milk price that we are having. If you are looking at the whole chain, the whole milk chain, you see that every bit of that whole chain gets nice margins and revenues, except for the producers. The producers are producing under cost price, and you can see that less and less farmers are interested in the milk sector. For the Netherlands, I will give you a figure. Only 1,600 farmers are under the age of 45, and that's not even 4% of the farmers in the Netherlands. And we have a large percentage of 45% that's older than 55. And that has all to do with the current system that does not recognize the need for a price for your product that covers the costs. And if Europe continues to do that in the new CAP, and it looks like they will, because they underestimate the power of the large multinationals, then it will continue, and it will not last very long before we have to import food, because we will not produce it ourselves anymore, because all the farmers have gone.
So the attractivity of the farming then, and the need to have like better prices, let's say, to cover the cost.
Yeah.
The big challenges.
We need a system that is really adjusted to the market, but also to the cost price that we have to make to produce our product. And a lot of politicians forget that when you produce a kilo of milk, you need to have certain feed, etc. And it has a price. And you cannot expect from the farmers to have to sell their product for less and less, like they did for the last decades. And the subsidy system, it has all gone for the worse. It did not help the European farmers, it didn't help the American farmers, and it didn't at all help the African farmers. Because what we say is food help is really helping to get a lot of African farmers bankrupt. And that's the system that we in Europe want to continue. And we as EMB are very much against that.
Okay, so we'll continue on that later. Maybe you, Hélène, you can tell us about what you do.
I'm a farmer, and I said mixed farming, but the major enterprise is dairy. And in Kenya, you find that 80% of the population live in the countryside, and we make our living from agriculture. And in that 80%, you find that 3/4 are small-scale farmers. And these are the people that produce the food that feeds the country. For example, 600,000 are dairy farmers and producing 70% of the milk that we consume in our country. Our big challenge is the marketing. We take our milk to the milk processors in the urban areas because we come from the rural areas where we have no electricity, we have no good roads, so we have to transport raw milk in the fastest way to reach to the creameries before it gets spoiled. Apparently, it is these processors, because of free trade, that have been importing powder milk from Europe. That's one casualty, first of all. They import powder milk because when they constitute it into fresh milk, it's cheaper than the milk that we are producing. And as a result, we suffer on prices. We get prices that the milk is underpriced vis-a-vis the cost of production that we produce the milk because of these imports that come into our country. Secondly, you find that with the Common Agricultural Policy, we find in your policy you have put it that it is competitiveness and that you want to target markets in the south because of the growing middle class level in urban areas, so that you want to sell your produce to those middle class people. And yet ourselves also as the farmers, we are producing in our country, not in the same standard like yours, but our market is also this middle class levels in those urban areas. Secondly, there's also the regional market. We have the other countries in East Africa that we market our milk through the processors. And if the CAP expresses its strong terms, it means that even those regional markets are going to be tampered with in our case.
Okay, so we'll come back on that topic as well later on the different questions. So finally, maybe Joe, you can just tell us what you do. Then we'll continue.
Okay, I'm a dairy farmer with my wife, and a couple of my sons are working with me. I'm active on a Minnesota Milk Producers Board, which is a state producer organization, and also I'm a board member on a national Dairy Policy Action Coalition, which is a group of farmers trying to affect federal dairy policy in the U.S. We have some of the same issues. We have reduced farm numbers, dairy numbers in Minnesota by 80% since I started 25 to 30 years ago. We've lost over 80% of our producers. And we have a lot of older producers as well that are left. And so we've had tremendous consolidation in the U.S. I think in the whole U.S. we are down to 60,000 farmers left. We're still producing a lot of milk. We've had a lot of consolidation. We've got, right now, 3% of our dairies are producing 50% of our milk in the country. And now with grain prices changing and the fluctuating market, they are the ones hurting probably the most. And so we're really at odds over how to do policy in the U.S., and I'm hoping to learn some things here. But I think we share a lot of the same problems. I think the processors in the middle have a little more power than they probably should in this legislative process, and I think the more farmers need to stand up and take a stand and try to get the prices, not just the prices, but the practices of marketing. I think we have a very non-transparent we have old-fashioned milk rules, milk pricing and shipping rules that need to be updated. I mean, this is the 21st century, and we're still operating under the milk pricing system set up in the 1930s. So we have a 160-cow dairy where we've got dairy beef on our farm, and we operate organically on the majority of it, and do some custom work for neighbors. So we've got a real nice, good dairy community, and but we'd like to keep what we have left. We've lost a lot of our neighbors, and I'd like my sons, if they continue farming, I'd like them to have neighbors and infrastructure to help support them. And if we aren't careful, we could lose a lot of that. And I always say the best thing we export off our farms is our kids, and that's a shame. We need to keep them. We got to keep the kids farming, or else it's going to be bad for the whole country.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have already touched a couple of critics here, like the prices, how to keep the prices to cover the cost, the attractivity, not to lose the whole sector. So maybe